Perfect. We are now recording.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Okay. So if everyone could let me know whether you can see the slideshow. Um, okay. All right. I see a few head nods. Thank you very much. So let's go ahead. Like I said, I have a few questions that I've created. There's no right or wrong answer, but we'd like to kind of hear your feedback. And once again, let's make this a little bit more of a discussion. So the first question here, right? What is most important to you in your next job? Um, so I know I said I was not going to pay attention to the chat room, but the poll function is not quite working, so we might have to use that whether I want to or not. Just type in the chat, what is most important for you? One, just one, you can only pick one. Why is the chat not showing up? Lauren, do you see chats? Apparently when I share the screen, I'm not seeing the chat window anymore. So.
Yes, I'm happy to kind of be your voiceover.
Yes, thank you.
Looks like the majority right now are all type of work, couple paychecks, but majority are sharing type of work is the most important.
Awesome. That's really good. So for those of you who said type of work, are you interested in sharing? And please feel free to share why is the type of work the most important thing for you in your next role? You can always ask Lauren to call out on people. Feel free to share. And once again, this is not a right or wrong answer. Just curious to hear kind of what's the motivation.
Yeah. Mostly just because I feel like I'd be incredibly bored if I had to do a job for reasons I didn't enjoy doing the job for.
Okay. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Absolutely. How about others? Feel free to just jump in.
Just to enjoy it and be satisfied, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're not going to be satisfied, I mean, we spend half our waking hours at the workplace, right? So that's really important to really enjoy what you're doing. Any other feedback? Any other comments? Anybody else willing to share?
I think it's really important to make an impact on the world as well. So not just doing it for yourself, but for others as well.
Okay, all right. Melinda, if I could put you on the spot for a second, why not then mission of the company? For the purpose of
I think that maybe they go hand in hand then. It depends on what type of company I end up working for, right? So the mission of the company would most likely be the type of job I would be doing as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, all right. So I'm glad to hear that many of you said, type of work you'll be doing. So I think that's a very important factor, right? One of the things that a lot of times we gravitate to is, and when we're looking at offers, is like, okay, what is the paycheck? And we look at the base salary, and we'll get into the details of the offer in a second. But I want us to almost take a step back when evaluating what our offers are and look at other factors beyond the paycheck. And a lot of my presentation today was created around a very recent discussion I had with a former student of mine. And we were going back and forth around two offers that she had. One of the things, even though students are working with me at AbbVie, we also, at the end of the day, are coaches to them, and whether they stay with AbbVie, which we would love them to stay with AbbVie, but we also want to support their career trajectory. And so I was having a conversation with one of my students, and she was deciding between two offers after working with us at the AbbVie Innovation Center. And one had a good salary, but not exactly in the role that she was looking for. It was related, but it was not exactly what she was looking for. The other was exactly right up her alley. It was what she wanted to do. But the salary was low. And she was going back and forth, and she said, I have to be realistic. I have to pay off my debts. And I said, that is absolutely reasonable, but let's dig further and let's think through what your considerations are. what are the pros and cons to each of these roles. She ended up going with the position that gave her more money, which again, it's not a judgment or anything, and there's nothing wrong with pursuing a paycheck, right? I want to make that very, very clear. We have different priorities, we have different focus, we have different needs, and that's absolutely okay. Interestingly enough, a month into her job, she emails me with the headline, the subject line, "Please take me back," was her headline. And two things stuck out. Number one, the work was not what she wanted to do. She knew going in, but until she actually started doing the work, she did not realize how far it was from what it is that she really wanted to do. But here was the second piece. And one of the reasons I wrote down people I will be working with and location of the job is because as I speak to more and more people, and this is beyond sort of students going out, such as yourselves, to your first job, or if you're in the middle of your career going on to your next position, the people you work with and the location of the job starts playing a factor. So she made the comment about the environment, who she was working with, the physical location outside of work, and it became a stressor for her. So it didn't matter that she was making a good paycheck from the role. The people that she was working with in the physical environment outside of work was also impacting her, and the trade-off started becoming pretty stressful for her. So that's one of the considerations. So I put these items up there in terms of what's important, not so much to say that you need to pick one or the other, but as you are thinking in terms of what is important to you, right, definitely think sort of broadly. I noticed, or at least based on what Lauren, again, I apologize that I'm not able to see the chat screen. I don't think anyone mentioned location of the job or the people that you'll be working with, but I would encourage you to also be thinking about that. When I was coaching students in engineering career services, a lot of the times I heard students who saying, I want to take the job with Microsoft, I want to take the job with Facebook, I want to go out to Silicon Valley. And I would ask them why. And so many will say, these are leading companies. I want to work for Google and the top tech firms. And absolutely great, by all means, do that. When we dug further, a lot of times it came down to the paycheck and what the amount that they would see up front. And I will always say, do you know how much you're going to be paying in taxes? Do you know how much you're going to be paying in rent? Do you know how much you're going to have to fork out down the road if you're in the family? And I'm not discouraging, again, bring these up to folks to discourage folks from taking an offer, but to really be thinking about the other pieces that come with a position, right, or with an offer. So as you're looking at offers, go beyond thinking and looking at what the base salary is and think of all the other sort of factors as well. So just a few notes that I wrote that I definitely wanted to make sure that I share with you, right? So going across the list. And, Milena, thank you for articulating the mission of the company really well. I appreciate that, so I'm not going to go over that too much. But in terms of the people you'll be working with, a piece of advice that I got from one of my first mentors when I started working, and so it's really sort of stuck true to me. Be mindful of who your first boss is, because they could make or break the rest of your career. And what he meant by that was, if you have someone who is not going to mentor and shape and provide you with those opportunities, who is not there to guide you, and when I say guide, I don't mean to micromanage or to hold your hands, right? But is there to kind of help you grow as an individual, as a professional, you're going to sort of set yourself back in many ways, because your boss or the people that you work with, it could be peers, right? Well, can open doors and set the stage for your future career growth. The other piece, and sort of, in hopefully in sharing the story about a former student of mine, that you sort of also start thinking about the people that you work with. And if you're not enjoying who you're working with, it's going to be sort of really challenging. Gallup has a poll or an assessment called Q12, and they measure engagement of employees with the company. And one of the questions they ask is, do you have a best friend in the company? And they're not asking it in a flippant way, but in their study, people who work in teams or in an organization where they can identify at least one person as a close friend in the company have a high level of engagement, and then subsequently also demonstrate a higher level of productivity, right? So if you're able to really sort of connect with the company and the people that you work with, you're more likely to sort of enjoy the work that you will be doing because the environment is supportive. Type of work, I don't think I need to go into that. I think all of you sort of are really sort of leaning towards that. So I applaud you. So as you're looking at offers, right, the paycheck might be really, really nice, but okay, what is the type of work that you're doing? When I was coaching MBA students, they always say, all right, the paycheck for consulting and investment banking is really good, so I want to go into investment banking, I want to go into consulting. But when I asked them what's really important, they said, well, you know, I don't really want to be traveling too much. I don't really want to put in too many hours. I really want to sort of raise a family. And you dig a little deeper to ask about sort of what it is that they're enjoying. And it's not about doing research. It's not about looking at spreadsheets. You know, it's not about the work that's related to consulting at all. So, you know, I think it's really important that, you know, those things align for you. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on location of job. You know, I talked about taxes, I talked about sort of cost of living, but other things to really sort of be thinking about that you may not immediately consider is cost of commuting, right? At V, for instance, our corporate headquarters is located in the northern suburbs of Chicago, up in Lake County. Even though I reside here in Champaign, when I go up to Chicago or to our corporate office, I stay downtown. And I know of AbbVie colleagues who commute daily from downtown Chicago up to North Chicago. And both ways, right, adds up each day. So you're spending 2 hours each day. And that adds time, right? It cuts into family time. It cuts into time that you could sort of be doing on some recreation. If you like going to the gym, you need to sort of work around that. So something to really pay attention to, right? I think we don't need to really sort of talk too much about the paycheck, and we might dive into that a little bit, but I want to give you a few resources, some of which you may have already sort of heard of. One of the resources I like is payscale.com. And that's a good way to sort of really benchmark what your salary is against others in a similar field, in a similar location, in a similar sort of number of years of experience. So payscale.com is one place. The other one is salary.com. And again, you know, just remember that these are self-disclosed salaries. And so take it with a grain of salt, and also sort of look at the details, right, of what the salary is supposed to cover, right? So again, the person's number of years of experience the person has, where's the location, what's the job title, things of that factors to really sort of make a comparison. Glassdoor is a popular one that you can look at, and then don't forget sort of within engineering career services, I know that they keep track of salaries that students offer as well. All right, any questions around this slide? Hopefully pretty straightforward. No? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no questions in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, because, sorry, Lauren, if you see a question in the chat, you know, feel free to interrupt me.
Will do.
All right, thanks. All right, so second set of questions, please type it into the chat, or, you know, shout out your answers. Again, don't be shy. What type of environment do you work best in? And again, this is more of a self-reflection for you. So is it an environment that is very structured, but it's a team environment, right? So everybody sort of works together, but there's a, you know, there's a formal structure around that. A team environment that's a little bit more unstructured, is very fluid. So AbbVie is one of those firms where it's a team-based environment, but it's very metrics, right? I can be in information technology, but I'm assigned to a team in R&D, or I'm assigned to a team in operations, or I'm assigned to a team in commercial. But that team is not exactly my my immediate sort of boss, right? It's a team that I'm supporting, but I'm really sort of embedded into that team. So it's a little bit more sort of fluid. The other type of environment where you can work independently, you're given a set of goals, objectives, but you control your own time. Right, so that's another kind of environment. And then the last one, an environment where you're pretty much left alone, and it's up to you to decide what challenges, what kind of work that you should be working on. So just quickly in the chat, or if you want to just call out your answers, what type of environment which you work best in?
Honestly, right now in the chat, Jerome, we're about 50-50 in either structured team-based environment or the opposite of kind of that unstructured. We do also have a few who have highlighted that, you know, they would like to take initiative to identify challenges, some one or two for independently control schedule, but almost like it's structured, unstructured, structured, unstructured. That's really what we're seeing come through.
Yeah. So that's the reason I brought this up is that as you're evaluating your offer, right? A lot of times when folks think about offer evaluations, they think about the physical, well, it's no longer sort of physical paper, but the actual offer, right? That comes through. But your evaluation really starts when you are speaking to recruiters, when you are speaking with people you know in the company, when you actually go on site, hopefully, we return to such a state. And you go on site and you start meeting the people, right? When you meet with your boss, start observing how people interact. What's the kind of environment that is in the company? And then think back to the types of study groups, the type of projects, the type of student organizations that you are currently part of, where you have thrived and have been most productive, right? Under what circumstances have you been most productive? And again, thinking back to my comments earlier, right, about the boss or the people that you'll be working with, right? This environment, this physical environment can make or break or impact, I shouldn't say make or break, right? It's not cut or dry. It can impact, it can influence what you are going to be doing down the road, right? So you want an environment that's nurturing, that's going to enable you to grow. So definitely sort of think about the type of environment you function best in. A lot of times there are students who think, all right, I've heard a lot about working in startups, and I really want to work for a startup. I think it's really exciting. They get offers coming in that has a really high stock options. The founder and the head of the startup has painted a very bright picture of the company. And I ask the students sometimes, well, tell me a time that you kind of jumped in and were comfortable being a jack of, many trades. And a lot of times a student will say, well, I really just I'm attracted to this because of the product that I'll get to develop, the work that I'll be doing. But in that environment, a startup environment, for instance, right, you have to be ready to jump in different areas, especially if it's a young sort of growing startup. Right? And so really thinking through what's the type of work that you'll be doing, what's the kind of environment that you'll be doing, and does this align with the environment that you work best in. And that's not to say one couldn't ever sort of jump back into a startup environment. On the flip side, I get students to say, I want to create, I want to do different things, but at the same time, I want to work with an established company. Okay, what is the trade-off there? Or within the company, is there such a team that you can innovate, come up with new ideas, and sort of really sort of push the boundaries of what's to come? That's one of the things I'll do, shamelessly do a plug. One of the things I like about working here at the AbbVie Innovation Center is that we're part of an established company, but we get to sort of really explore applications of new technologies in in a pharmaceutical firm. We like to call ourselves, we were founded in 2013, but we're kind of like the oldest startup, and so we like to call ourselves, because we broke off of AbbVie that was founded in the 1800s. So we have a long history, but also a very young history in some ways, right? Any
Jerome.
questions on, yeah,
Yeah, I was going to just say, it was perfect segue. I do have a question that was posted in the chat.
yeah.
If, you know, it's one thing if you've had the opportunity to work with a company and so you kind of are able to feel the vibe, but if you want to ask questions for a recruiter about the work environment, what's the best way to gauge like the community environment peers, especially if it's a company that you've never worked for?
I try to steer away from recruiters as much as possible, and I don't let other recruiters do that. I know this is important. Instead, try to sort of really ask people who are in the role or are going to be in the team that you work with. So when you speak, let's say you go to a career fair, you speak to a recruiter, and you ask, "Oh, what's it like to work for X company?" And they will give you a very sort of generic and give you a very positive answer. And that's when you need to maybe sort of start pushing a little bit more. And sometimes some of the questions I sometimes like to ask, and again, my preference is to ask folks who are sort of, you know, in the team itself. Now, if you're going for an HR role, by all means, ask the recruiter, because, you know, that's the team that's going to be in. And even within the same company, different teams will have slightly different cultures. But one of the questions I like to ask is, you know, what is one aspect of your team that you most enjoy? And then the follow-up question to that is, you know, get them comfortable. And then the follow-up question to that is, what is the one aspect of your team that you find most challenging about? And it gets uncomfortable sometimes for some folks. And if they're willing to sort of share, you know, their thoughts in it, you kind of get a sense of what the culture is. You definitely don't want to ask, the question I definitely want to encourage all of you to avoid is, you know, tell me what the culture of the company is, because that is so open, that is so broad. They'll throw out all the different principles of the company and the values of the company, and that doesn't really get into the thick of things. And that's one of the reasons I like the interviews itself, because that's when you get to see the dynamics within a team. A lot of folks always forget that, and I'm talking about the hiring side, right? When you're interviewing a candidate, how you interview is also a signal of what you're portraying as the culture of your team. So, you know, really sort of gauge your interviewer and your interviewers and what the dynamic is, that could give you a sense of that team there. Other questions? I'm gonna flip this over to you guys for a second. What kind of questions have you asked to kind of gauge the culture of a company? Several of you are graduating 2021, so you've been on some interviews already. What questions have you used, or strategies have you used to gauge the culture of the company?
Hi, I have asked one time that what is the hiring person's philosophy of success? Like, how does he evaluate his team members?
I'm sorry, Tajin, I didn't hear your full response. Could you say that again? I'm sorry. It's raining.
Sorry, maybe because I'm wearing a mask.
No,
So yeah, I have asked what is their philosophy when it comes to evaluating success of team members, or
okay.
how do they evaluate team members, basically?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good question to ask. One caveat to that is it really focuses on more on the performance aspect, as opposed to the dynamics between individuals in a team, right? So, but it's still a valid question. Other questions you've asked? Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. And then once again, you know, feel free to ask questions along the way. All right, this is my last kind of set of questions for you guys. All right, what is the most important factor for you? Actually, fill in the blank. The most important factor to consider in a job offer is, what is it going to be? And again, this is not a right or wrong answer.
I'll just kind of read them as they come in. So
Yeah.
we've got base, time off, base salary, retirement, base, health and insurance benefits times 2,
Yeah.
another base salary, health and insurance, base. One person said all of them.
Yes.
Base salary, time off, benefits, and bonus or stock options. So I think our leading response is probably base.
Yeah. Okay.
But health insurance is also, I would say, a top response.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. So all of you are really sort of thinking through all of that. Base salary is definitely a very, very important criteria. However, I think through our discussion, I hope one piece that you're taking away is that that's not the main criteria. No, I shouldn't say not the main criteria. It's not the only criteria, right? So whoever answered all of the above, that's something I would definitely encourage you to look at. Look at the full package. More and more companies are listing the full value of the package. So whether it's, okay, here's what we are paying for in terms of the retirement, here's what we're paying for in terms of the health insurance, and all those things add up in terms of your total benefit package, right? So I'll give you an example. When I first joined the University of Illinois, the salary, I'm not gonna lie, right? The salary was on the low end, right? I was fresh out of college, and I joined, and I was like, you know what? It's a job. I need the money. I'm gonna sort of take it. And then I started to learn, and I didn't look at all the other benefits, right? So I was young and sort of totally naive, and I just needed money. I was driven totally by paycheck. I just needed a job. And so I took the job. But as I continued working for University of Illinois, I started to realize, oh, the retirement benefits are actually sort of pretty good. The health insurance is actually really good. And now when I started looking at other jobs, it became really hard to leave the university, because it's like, okay, the retirement benefits and the health benefits don't quite match, until AbbVie came along. But that's a different story, right? And you start sort of really sort of looking at all the other sort of things. Now, it's easy to say, okay, I'm young in my career, and so I don't really need to think about health benefits, or I don't need to think about retirement benefits. But I would like to encourage you to actually start thinking about those aspects of your package right now, because those things add up, right? So as part of your retirement benefits, for instance, right, you could be looking at a 401k, you could be looking at a pension plan. Now, more and more companies are not offering the pension, and most of them are relying on a 401. But think about the interest that you could sort of be making once you start the 401, right? And even on the 401, think about what the company is matching. Some companies will say, okay, we do a dollar for dollar match for up to 5% of your base salary. Okay, great. Others will say, we'll do a dollar for dollar match up to 4% of your salary, but then 50 cents on the dollar for the remaining 2%, right? So they start getting sort of really tricky into that. So do the math, right? And look at what the final package is going to be. So that's one of the things with retirement. The second piece with the health insurance, and all this typically comes in the offer, or you might have to ask, what's the link to the offer or the information on health and insurance benefits, right? Typically, a company may have 1 or 2 plans that you can choose from. What does the plan cover? If there are conditions that you need covered, make sure that the plan that the company offers provides that, right? If you think about wanting a family, all right, does the insurance provide spousal coverage? Does it provide dependent coverage if you decide to have children down the road, right? What's the life insurance that's provided, or the disability insurance, right? Knock on wood, right? We don't want anything happening, but we never know what could happen. So definitely
Hey,
encourage you to
Jerome.
be thinking through that. Yes, Lauren.
One question that popped up was, what are
Yep.
do you know of any good resources to compare retirement benefits? Like, we've got salary.com that we can do certain
Mhm.
things. Are there any resources that you're aware of that allows you to compare the retirement benefits?
If you look at, so off the top of my head, no, because usually the retirement benefits are very specific to the individual companies.
Mhm.
They don't, it's not like you get to pick a retirement with the company. The company either has it or, and whatever they have is what they have. What you can evaluate is whether what they have meets what your needs are. Or if you have a competing offer from another company, you can sort of make that comparison. So I'll give you an example, and this is a totally sort of arbitrary example. You may get an offer that's 150,000. That's your base salary. You may have a bonus that is, say, 20 on signing and another 20 on your first day. Which, by the way, bonuses are taxed as well, right? And don't forget, these are one-offs, right? So it may sound really exciting in the offer. It's like, look, I actually get 190, but when you actually sort of take the tax, it ends up being, half of that, right? So just think about that. So let's say this offer has 150 base, 20 and 20 bonus, but then the retirement is a 401, right? It's a 5%. You are allowed to contribute 5% of your base salary for the year, but the company does not match, right? But they have very generous time off. In fact, they say it's a very flexible. We don't monitor your time off. They have lots of good sort of fringe offers, fringe services, and fringe benefits on site. You have another company that might give you, say, 100K as the base salary, a 10,000 signing bonus. That's it, right? 15 days 15 days of vacation, maybe sort of a few days, 3 days of sort of personal time. But they have a 5%, right, where you contribute and they match you that 5% dollar for dollar, right? So thinking long term, what are you going to be most comfortable with, right? So if you're looking from a longer term perspective, you're putting in 5%, the company is not sort of matching that. Yes, they gave you the higher bonus and it is a higher salary, but what's the cost of living in that location, right? How much are you actually taking home and how much can you actually put into an investment wealth management account, right? Versus say the company that has a lower base salary, yes, your contributions at the 5% is lower, but the company is matching that amount that you're putting in. Most of the time, the 5%, right, you're allowed to put in more money, right? So if let's say your take home ends up being higher because let's say, it's 100,000, but you're in a city or a location where the cost of living is lower, you could most probably put away more money. Yes, the company is only going to match you that first 5%, but the company is still matching you on that 5%, right? So think about what that would translate sort of in the longer term. And that's how I would make the comparison. If you go to sort of, I think different financial advisors site, I think different financial advisors have different sort of opinions around what's a good retirement. I haven't seen a site, or I don't know of one. So if any of you know of one, definitely sort of please share that. But I don't know of one that says, oh, this is the best type of retirement sort of plan, because it really depends on the company. It's really specific to the company. So you're typically comparing company to company and what they're offering. Hopefully that makes sense. So, okay. All right. Other questions? Thank you for all your questions. Okay. All right. This is my last slide. And again, like I said, I take no credit for this list. The reason I'm willing to share this list, because this is exactly the questions that I ask myself when I'm evaluating an offer. It's the exact same questions I ask when I'm coaching and working with students or other clients when they come to me about questions around offer. The link is right there, and I will share these slides with Lauren so that you can access this site. It's from the website called Balance Careers. This is a sort of well-known career site. It's very legit, and I sort of trust a lot of the information they provide. But here's the general checklist, right? So salary, so you got the base salary, you got the bonus, you have the projected salary increases. What are the overall benefits and perks, right? So they're really sort of thinking holistically about that. The one piece that I forgot to mention around sort of vacation and sick time or time off. When you're looking at the offers, please be mindful of how a company phrases their time off. What I'm seeing more and more of is that companies will say, okay, this is your time off. So you get 15 days of time off. However, I always ask, is the time off vacation only? Or is it vacation and sick time? Or is it vacation, but then sick time is really sort of on my own, I get to decide. And then in that case, you really need to be asking, what is the sick leave policy? Different companies will say, if you're taking 1 or 2 days and you need to take care of yourself, by all means, I'm not going to sort of monitor that as a company. Other companies are going to say each time you are genuinely sick, you have to report that sick, and that counts towards your sick time, right? And so some companies say you get 15 days vacation, 10 days sick leave. And then this ties into, all right, how does this feed in then into things like parental leave, right? So maternity leave, paternal leave, right? So something to really sort of factor in as well. Hidden costs, right? That's the cost of living, commuting costs, things of that nature. If you are switching roles and you need to buy, let's say you decide you want to go into consulting and you say, all right, now I have to really get some new suits. Then maybe you need to do that. Now the culture in a lot of companies is changing. What you wear to college, you kind of can almost translate into the workplace, almost, not quite, almost. But you have to invest in new clothes. We talked a lot about the work environments, and I don't want to belabor that. And then the pros and cons, do a list, right? Make the comparison for yourself. And then the most important thing, right, is your inner voice. And over the years, having worked in different places, I cannot tell you how important your inner voice is, or your gut, right? Your gut feeling. I once went for an interview and I accepted the job. But I knew it was a risk for me. I accepted the job as I have a feeling I'm not going to get along with my boss, but I wanted a new challenge. I wanted a new environment. This was definitely a step up for me. Again, I was driven by sort of career progression and the paycheck, and I didn't listen to my gut. And very quickly, I learned that, yep, sure enough, my boss and I were not going to get along, and I had to find something new, right? So listen to what your inside voice sort of tells you, and if you're not sure, talk this out with somebody you trust. As well, right? And that's where the pros and cons sometimes come into play. All right. So that's my sort of main presentation itself. I was hoping that this, we would be able to be more sort of interactive in an in-person, but circumstances as such. But I want to open this up to any questions that any of you have, if they're very specific. And so far, the questions you've been asking have been great, so keep them coming.